He said he had zero merit in it. The man who signed Lewis Hamilton, the man who dropped Carlos Sainz to make room for him, the man whose own job was reportedly under threat over how badly the signing had gone, stood in front of a camera in Barcelona and gave every ounce of credit away. Not some of it, all of it. In this video, you will understand why that sentence is not modesty, it is a confession, and by the end you will know exactly what it confesses to. Let's start with what actually happened on track, because the numbers matter before the words do. Lewis Hamilton won the Barcelona-Catalunya Grand Prix by 19.5 seconds over George Russell. He started second on the grid, ran a three-stop strategy while the Mercedes cars ran two, and caught the perfect window when Fernando Alonso's Aston Martin stopped at the side of the circuit, triggering a virtual safety car that let him pit almost for free. Kimi Antonelli retired from second place that same afternoon. The result of all of it, Hamilton's gap in the championship to Antonelli dropped from 66 points to 41 points in one single Sunday. That is not a small swing. That is 25 points erased in one afternoon, the kind of number that usually takes half a season to move. If you want the stories the paddock doesn't put in the press releases, subscribe right now and drop a comment telling me which country you're watching from, because this next part hits different depending on where you are and depending on how long you've been watching this team suffer. Now here is the part that matters more than the trophy. After the race, Fred Vasseur was asked directly whether Hamilton's resurgence was down to the upgrades Ferrari had brought, down to the strategy call, down to anything the team had engineered. And Vasseur said no. His exact words, "I have zero merit in this. It's Lewis himself. He was able to come back after a tough moment, a tough journey, some tough weekends. He was able to reset completely and continue to push. He continued to come to the factory every Tuesday morning." Read that again. Not the strategy department, not the upgrade path, not the technical director. The team principal, in his own words, on the record, handed the entire turnaround to one man showing up to a factory on a day nobody was watching him. This is not a rival engineer briefing the press off the record. This is not paddock gossip repeated at a bar. This is the man who signed Hamilton to Ferrari in the first place, who broke the news to Carlos Sainz in a phone call he later described as one of the hardest of his life, who then had to make an even harder call to his old friend Toto Wolff at Mercedes to tell him Hamilton was leaving. This is the same man who, by August of last year, was fielding rumors that his own position at Ferrari was under threat, with names like Christian Horner floated as his replacement, while the car he had built around a seven-time champion sat winless. Everything Vasseur had was tied to this decision working, so when he says he has zero merit, he is not being generous. He is making a very specific claim about a very specific year, and he knows exactly what he is giving up by saying it. So let's put the interrogation to it, because a claim like that deserves scrutiny, not applause. Did Ferrari's upgrades win this race? Vasseur said the pace had been building for a few rounds, not just Barcelona, so partly, yes, but he was explicit that pace alone had been there in tougher weekends too, when the results didn't follow. Did the strategy win the race? Vasseur credited it, but immediately qualified it. The strategy went very well today, but it also went very well in the last couple of events when the pace was a bit less impressive. Translation: the pit wall did its job before, and it wasn't enough. So if it isn't the car and it isn't only the strategy, what's left? The driver? That is the only variable Vasseur pointed to that had actually changed between a disastrous 2025 and this Sunday in Barcelona. Now, here's where the comparison does the real work. So keep two dates in mind, because they come back. 6 months ago, almost to the week, this is what the paddock was saying about the same driver, in public, on the record. Martin Brundle called Hamilton's radio messages during a bad weekend in Miami telling in its sarcasm, and said it showed how upset the seven-time champion was with his own form. During the Saudi Arabian Grand Prix weekend, Hamilton's own race engineer read him a deficit of 7/10 in one sector and 4/10 in another, and Hamilton's reply, caught on the broadcast, was a single flat word: "Geez." Fans online weren't gentle either. One comment, widely shared at the time, told him it was time to vacate the cockpits. Another compared his form to Daniel Ricciardo's final, painful year in the sport. That is the temperature 6 months ago. Now put next to it what the same team's boss said this month: resilience, reset, pushing, zero merit. Nothing about the driver changed in the sentence structure of who he is. What changed is that The results finally caught up to a version of him that, according to his own boss, never actually left the building. And if you're not subscribed yet, this is the exact kind of story you'll want to be here for when it happens again, because it always circles back around in this sport. There's a version of this story that ended very differently, and it happened only 7 months earlier in Abu Dhabi, the last race of a season Hamilton would rather forget. He signed off over team radio with a long, warm message. "Long season, guys. Grazie a tutti. Thank you for your kindness. I'm grateful for all the hard work. I'll always fight for you guys. Always." Silence followed. A real, uncomfortable silence, long enough that Hamilton had to ask his own engineer, on air, "Did you get that message? The one time you don't reply." His race engineer eventually answered with an apology dressed as a joke. Fans online called it disrespectful. That is the closing scene of the year Vasseur is now calling a tough journey. A season that ended with a driver thanking a team that couldn't find the words to thank him back in real time. What comes next is the part nobody in the paddock wanted written down, so before I give it to you, subscribe. Because this story has a second half, and it lands the moment Ferrari's next result forces Vasseur to answer the championship question again. And he will have to. Here's the number that turns a nice story into a real one: 19.5 seconds. That's the margin Hamilton won by. In a sport where podiums are decided by tenths, where a 5-second penalty can cost an entire result, a gap of 19.5 seconds isn't a race win. It's a statement. Take away the virtual safety car luck if you want to be skeptical, and Hamilton still had genuine pace on Russell from the start of that final stint. That is the steel man for the other side of this, and it is a fair one. Some of this was fortune, a car stopping at the right moment, a safety car window opening exactly when Ferrari needed it. That is a defensible position. It is also not the one that survives when you line it up against the 25-point swing in the championship, and a team principal choosing, unprompted, to hand every ounce of credit to one man. Because here's what Vasseur did next. And it's the part that tells you he knows exactly how fragile this all still is. Within minutes of being asked whether Ferrari could now fight for the title, whether Hamilton chasing what would be an 8th championship was suddenly realistic, Vasseur shut it down twice in the same press conference. "I'm not sure I want to reply to this kind of question," he said. "I had probably some comments 2 weeks ago that everything was a disaster, and now we are speaking about the World Championship. This is the worst approach that I could have." And then again, days later. "Nothing changed today compared to last week in Monaco. The result is different. The outcome of the race is different." Is that a man protecting his driver from pressure? Or a man protecting himself from a repeat of last year's headlines? There's no comfortable answer. Pick one. That question matters more than it looks like on the surface because Vasseur has been here before, betting on communication and getting burned by it. Back in March during the Chinese Grand Prix, Ferrari swapped Hamilton and Charles Leclerc's positions after a pit stop sequence, and the broadcast never aired Hamilton's radio pushback on the call. Formula One management later admitted through a spokesperson that the message was not played due to other developing situations, insisting there was absolutely no intention of presenting a misleading narrative. Vasseur was the one who said he would raise it directly with FOM. Whether or not you believe that omission was innocent, the pattern is the same one running through this entire year. What comes out of Hamilton's side of the garage keeps arriving late, filtered, or not at all, until the numbers force everyone to listen. This is bigger than one radio message or one press conference. Look at the structural piece underneath all of it. A team principal who staked his own job on a 7-time champion, in a car built around new regulations for next year, in a partnership with a technical director brought in from Mercedes specifically to make this signing work. Every one of those decisions was Vasseur's. If Hamilton had kept struggling, all of it would have been read as his mistake. Instead, the same structure that nearly cost him his position is now the exact thing being praised in public. That's not luck. That's a team principal whose entire tenure was quietly on trial the whole time this story was unfolding, whether the cameras framed it that way or not. Do I know for certain whether Vasseur's own position was genuinely at risk last August, the way it was reported? I don't have proof of what was said in private, and I'm not going to pretend I do. What I can tell you is that the rumors were public, the names floated as replacements were public, and the timing of Zero Merit landing 7 months later, right as those same rumors would have resurfaced if Barcelona had gone the other way, is not a coincidence anyone should ignore. It's a legitimate question, not a verdict. Austria is next on the calendar, and Vasseur has already told the press exactly what he intends to do there. The approach is to go to Austria with exactly the same mindset we had in Barcelona, not to think about the championship, not to project ourselves 25 races ahead. That's not a throwaway line. That's a man who has already decided how he wants this story to be told next, before it's even happened. Keep that in mind going into that weekend, because it comes back. So here's the verdict. Vasseur didn't hand Hamilton the credit because it was easy. He handed it over because the alternative, staying quiet, or splitting the credit evenly the way team principals usually do to protect everyone's ego at once, would have left the door open for exactly the question he then had to shut down twice. By saying zero merit, he closed the loop before a journalist could open it. That's not humility. That's a man who has learned the hard way, over one very public and very difficult year, exactly what happens when Ferrari lets a story get away from it before he controls the framing himself. Was he always this good, and everyone just needed permission to say it? The comments are yours. Tell me which quote in this video changes your read on the season more, the radio silence in Abu Dhabi or the zero merit line in Barcelona. This story is not over, and when Austria forces Vasseur to answer the championship question a third time, and it will, you'll want to be here for it. If you found this useful, hit like, and until the next one.